meeting of the Falmouth Conservation Commission. At this time, I'll ask you to please silence all your electronic devices. If you're gonna hold a private conversation, please take it outside. If you're here to speak on any matter before the commission, and we do encourage you to do so, there will be an opportunity during the public comment period portion of each hearing. At the appropriate time, please approach the podium, state your name for the record, and speak into the microphone. This meeting is being recorded by FCTV. If there is anyone else recording this meeting, please identify yourself for the record. For the record, the appointed alternate for tonight is Kevin. First up, vote minutes, February 19th.
I'm the only one.
And we're lucky
You're
to have you,
special.
Kevin.
Who else?
You're special.
Mr. Chairman, I reviewed the minutes. I found them to be substantially accurate. I'd move approval of the minutes.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I don't know why you would. Request for continuance under a notice of intent. Scott Tynell, 163 Bay Road, North Falmouth, Mass., for permission to conduct shellfish aquaculture within Rand's Canal and Megansett Harbor.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the applicant is requesting a continuance until April 22nd.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for a continuance to 4/22, you said?
22.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Next request for continuance under a notice of intent. John Mullen, 410 Surf Drive, Falmouth, Mass., for permission to raise RAZE existing pilings and horizontal structural members and construct a cabana with associated utilities and to install a sewage tight tank.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the applicant is requesting a continuance until March 25th.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to continue until March 25th. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next up, for request for continuance under notice of intent, Cape House 11 LLC, 207, 217, and 223 Meadow Neck Road, East Falmouth, Mass., for permission to enhance and reconstruct an existing coastal engineered structure and to extend the structure along the shoreline. You're up, Jen.
Yep, I know that.
She is,
I told
she's
them
reading.
Oh.
22. Okay, we'll have to go with that. Yes, the applicant is requesting a continuance until March 18th. That was not okay.
So moved.
Second.
Are we okay with that date?
Well, that's the date they requested. I had talked to the applicant about the 25th, but, we'll go with the 18th.
Okay.
18?
Yeah.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say.
Wait a second. Do you know, Russ, you're not gonna be here, right?
I'm here next
Yes.
week, yes, I had to change my vacation, so I will be here next week.
Next week is the
It's
11th.
not
No,
next
the
week.
18th.
The-
The 18th, I will be here also.
Okay.
What's the quorum on that, Betsy?
Courtney, Kevin, me, but I'm not gonna be here. Russ, Steve, Peter, and Mark.
This is the 18th. I'll be here.
Okay.
Do I have it?
Yeah, you have a
Okay.
quorum.
Okay.
A quorum plus a couple.
So Russell, you're gonna be here on the 18th, so I can
Correct.
take that off? Okay.
Yeah, it's, I'll give you the change date
Okay,
later.
that's fine.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Next request for continuance under notice of intent. Anastasios Parafestas, trustee, 160 Penzance Road, Woods Hole, Falmouth, Mass., for permission to install a 12 by 20 pool, stone pool terrace, stone retaining walls, stone steps, pool utilities, lighting, fencing, drainage, and all associated clearing, excavation, grading, irrigations, landscaping, and mitigation plantings.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the applicant is requesting a continuance. Mike, when are you requesting a continuance to? The second,
First week of April, right?
first week of April? That's what I thought. April 1st.
Okay.
Never April Fool's Day.
You don't wanna be here April Fool's Day, Mike?
Mike, do you want
That's too
April,
bad,
do you
Mike.
want April 1st, or would you like April 8th?
April 8th, please.
So
Okay.
moved.
We have a second?
Second?
We have a motion and a second to continue until April 8th. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous.
No, you said the 8th.
Next up, requests for determination of applicability. First up, Michael Andrews, 233 Knobska Road, Woods Hole, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to remediate soil impacted with lead from historic use of lead-based paint at the property.
Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the bylaw and a -3 under the state. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion from the board? Any comments from the public? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Next up, Denisa and Sheldon Wagner, 46 Gosnold Road, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to construct a small bay and deck addition and install mitigation plantings.
Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the bylaw and a -3 under the state. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I have a question. What's a bay?
Window bump out?
that would
Small
be-
bay window.
Bay window.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Just gonna
It
pick
is unanimous.
Did you skip one?
No?
Did you skip 233 Knobska Road?
No, we did
That was
that
the
one.
first one,
Already did.
Okay. All right.
and we approved it.
Oh, we went from,
Next up, and I apologize, I'm probably gonna slander this name, Wilwood Jurassic Holdings, 55 Whitman Road, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to upgrade an existing septic system to Title V regulations.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -1 under the state and a -6 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
So moved.
Second.
Look at them, they-
And I'm not gonna ask because I've asked before and whatever the explanation is, I know it's somewhere in the,
It's just outside your
Regulations.
jurisdiction,
okay.
okay?
All right. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Next up, Salt Pond Areas Bird Sanctuaries, Inc., Zero Surf Drive, parcel number 5007-031-069, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to smooth and regrade the existing gravel parking lot with a Bobcat machine to remove potholes.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the bylaw and a -3 under the state. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. John R. Durack, 32 Hoople Road, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to upgrade an existing subsurface sewage disposal system to Title V regulations.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the bylaw and a -3 under the state. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
So moved.
Second.
Second, but I have a question. Where is Hoop Hole Road?
It's up.
Behind the fairgrounds.
It's
Off of
on,
151.
Jenkins?
No, at the 151.
Schuman Pond. It's
Oh,
near
it's up
Mashpee.
in-
It's the
So
last
you go
It's up in
property.
past-
Hatchville.
No, so you know where the fairgrounds are?
Yep.
Take Courier Road behind the fairgrounds? The road that comes past the Audubon property and goes into Mashpee towards John Pond?
Yep.
That's Hoop Hole Road.
So is that McCoy or East Falmouth?
East
or-
Falmouth.
Falmouth.
East Falmouth.
Okay. Okay.
Dot those i's, cross those t's.
I know, I just want to know.
It's in Mashpee.
Okay, Mark. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Next up, continued request for determination of applicability. Richard and Patricia Torre, 57 Cape Cod Road, West Falmouth, Mass, for after-the-fact permission to install a water service to the dwelling and rebuild a section of stone wall.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the applicant has requested a continuance until April 8th.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to continue until April 8th. Any discussion from the board? Any comments from the public? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next up, Heather and Thomas Mahoney, 2 LCN Avenue, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to construct and maintain a front porch and to install a native tree.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, staff is recommending a +3 under the state. and a +5 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
I'm gonna jump in here. We had met on site with, Holmes and McGrath representatives, after we reached out and said that we were gonna issue a positive. It was staff's recommendation to Holmes and McGrath that they, request a continuance until, the next available hearing to give the board a chance to go out and review the site, so that you can make a determination of whether or not mitigation plantings would be required on the site.
You gave them the option, but they didn't take it?
No, they're here, well,
I believe it's appropriate for the commission to go look at the site, and I would request a continuance to April
Okay.
8th.
thank you. How about to the 18th?
The 18th of April's fine.
Okay, but are we voting on the positive?
18th of March, Mike.
18th of March?
18th of March.
No, you're going to continue it to the
Just gonna
18th of
continue it.
March.
So we should have a withdrawal,
That's
a
my
motion
question.
to continue.
Yeah.
Second.
Okay, we have a
It's
motion.
Elysian Road,
Mm-hmm.
continue to the 18th, okay.
So we have a motion and a second to continue until the 18th. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? It is unanimous.
Jamie, hold on one second, please.
You made the motion, right?
Courtney?
No.
Courtney made the
Courtney
motion.
made Yeah, the motion
second.
was to
Continue? Withdraw,
withdraw the
withdraw.
approval, or the approval of the of the recommendation, and to continue it to whatever date it was,
318.
18th.
Thank you.
I did.
Pick one.
Steve?
One of those nights.
Okay.
Moving forward, requests for hearing under a notice of intent. All hearings of the Falmouth Conservation Commission are held simultaneously under the authorities of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw. Although a single decision of the commission is issued, it represents a separate decision under each authority. First up, Falmouth Holdings Corporation, 278 Scranton Avenue, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to reconfigure existing timber piers, ramps, floats, tie-off pilings, replace and repair the existing travel lift piers, install a boat wash pad and tight tank, relocate the ticket office, construct a boardwalk, and replace the existing timber bulkhead, including all associated excavation, drainage improvements, utility installation, and landscaping.
I got not more than that. You're not kidding. It's hard to visualize on site, I found.
I'm just gonna look at it from the other side.
Should have fired a vote.
Can I get a letter from Fraser on this?
Yeah, I saw, you know what, I saw something.
Yes.
Here's one from Frazier.
Keyboard?
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah,
Okay.
Password's later.
Just don't make it any bigger?
there is that.
That's what he said, right?
For such a project, kind of a simple
I can't type.
statement, huh?
I mean, it's not moving anything, it's not
Right.
going anywhere.
Just improvements.
It's not gonna,
I'm just curious about the walkway on the top side.
Well, I know I had you got something from,
Good evening, my name's
Harbor
Michael McGrath. I'm a registered professional land surveyor and a registered professional engineer. I work for Holmes and McGrath, and I've handed out to the commission copies of these exhibits. And I've also given you a diagram that shows, whoops, wrong one.
Did I take your light away? I'm sorry.
No, I can't find my exhibit.
How about on the top, Mike, going down this way? No, other side. There you go.
Oh, they're not there. So what I propose to do is go through the exhibits because that's the best way to describe the work that's being proposed. It's rather an extensive project. It's basically rebuilding the waterfront at the Falmouth Marine and Yachting Center. So the first exhibit I'm showing is basically a map that shows all of Falmouth Inner Harbor, and this is the location of the project that we're proposing to do the work. It's owned by Falmouth Marine and Yachting. I'm sorry, it's owned by Falmouth Holdings Company. It's called Falmouth Marine and Yachting. So the notice of intent is extensive, so the first thing we ought to do is look at the existing conditions. Scranton Avenue on this is on the top. North is generally, this one doesn't seem to have a north arrow, but all the others will have a north arrow. This is found within a harbor. So what exists today is a very long building. It's the main building. There's a projection and there's stairs. There's very large doors here. There's paved parking, there's a paved driveway, there's shell parking on this side. There's a concrete pad that's underneath some, generally it's underneath some shells and gravel, then there's shell parking all the way around. Along the waterfront, there's an existing pier and float, then there's a float system with a whole bunch of dinghies stacked on it. There's the ticket office. There's a substantial pier, including a large crane. Then this is the travel lift pier. There's two arms here. There's a ferry service that goes out to Martha's Vineyard that basically ties up here. And then there are a series of, it's a fixed pier here, a fixed pier here, and then there's floats. If you go with low water, you can see that a lot of the piles underneath the structures are in bad shape. So we need to replace these. And while we're replacing it, there's this old timber bulkhead, and we're going to do work on the proposed timber bulkhead. So what I've done now is I have another exhibit that shows the proposed work. And what we're doing is we originally filed a slightly different plan, and the harbor master asked us to move certain of the float extensions at the north end back. So this is a revised plan. This is the plan that shows them being revised, so they all line up. Before, they were coming very close to the Corps of Engineers 30-foot offset. The Corps of Engineers dredges this, and when they dredge it, they have established a channel line. And the Corps of Engineers says no new structures can lie within 30 feet of the channel line. So the harbor master has given you a positive referral this, and he's asked you to condition it that no tied-up boat projects into within 30 feet of the travel line, and that's a suitable condition. So what this is the proposed work, and we are reconfiguring the floats so that I will show you a graphic that shows you we're decreasing the amount of floats and the amount of structures in the water, even though we're adding a slip. So the next thing we should look at is what work are we doing on the bulkhead? I should go back to this, because this bulkhead is in sad shape, and so what we're proposing to do is repair the bulkhead. The way that we're going to repair the bulkhead is that we're basically going to drive behind the bulkhead plastic sheeting, or vinyl sheeting, not plastic. So this shows that if you follow, there are these channels, and the channels continue. So this is the line of the existing bulkhead, the existing piles. And what we do is we, basically, you drive these down behind the bulkhead. And this is a plan view, this is a diagram, and you basically, you drive this all the way down. This is the existing sheathing. You cut it off at about mean high water to the mud line. Use it as a guide. When you do that, you take the tie rods out, then you reinsert the tie rod and weld it. So this is a technique that's been used successfully before. This cross-section shows you that there's going to be a timber walkway that's going to go from the top of the bulkhead all the way back about 4 feet. Then landward of that is going to be a drainage trench, and I'll talk about that some more. This cross-section down here shows the construction of the travel lift. The travel lift is in pretty bad shape. If you look at it, there's a lot of these piles are in fact, well, the existing piles are suffering in that there's a lot of loss of mass. So what these are brand-new steel piles that are being installed here. On top of the steel pile is going to be a steel frame and then reinforced concrete. On the outside is going to be basically mooring piles to, so that structures can be tied up to the outside of this, this travel lift pile. This is a plan of the travel lift. So we'll talk some more about these issues and when we look at the future work. This is another cross-section. I talked about the drainage. When you build any project that involves a commercial site, you have to publish a stormwater management plan, and we've published a stormwater management plan. So, as I said, this is the new vinyl sheeting, this is the new walkway that's going to be constructed, and landward there's going to be basically a gravel trench with some sand in it, a special, well, it's basically Title V sand. Then there's another collection layer, and we show that every 20 feet or so, there's a 4-inch pipe going out. So the proposal is that surface water come in here, it gets filtered out, so we remove total suspended solids and things like that. And then the water would be discharged over the side into the harbor. Now, there is a wash pad on site. What's a wash pad? I'm sorry. DEP has now published standards for work. Let me go back to, when you have a travel lift now, you're supposed to install a drainage system. The drainage system here is that there is a reinforced concrete pad. It's constructed such that all the runoff that falls off the boat goes into a trench grate that's located right in here. And the trench grate has got the trench grate is connected to a shallow, basically sealed tank. We have identified the size as it's a shallow 3,000-gallon industrial wastewater holding tank. So what happens is that as the water comes in, it fills this tank up. This is not, the department says that this has to be taken and basically disposed at a treatment plant. So whenever it reaches a certain level, they will, basically they will call and get it pumped. These manholes will be sealed during rainstorms, so we're not pumping rain. In any case, so there's the details of the industrial holding tank that we have to put in. And I said, this is the wash pad I described. This is the walkway that I described, and the walkway goes all the way along. There was a ticket office that was being, that that was used before, and now it's gonna be built in this location, so there is a structure that's gonna be moved or rebuilt. I'm sorry, this is a brand-new structure. So, the bottom line is we're basically rebuilding the waterfront. What this exhibit shows is that there is 353 piles that support the existing piles and solid pier structures, including the way, this is the existing. So there's 6,080 square feet of structures that project out into the water. And we're showing that there's 5,447 square feet of structures. So we believe that we are reducing the impact on Falmouth Inner Harbor. We do have one additional slip that's gonna pay for all of this. In any case, it's quite an expense for this facility. This facility is quite old, to say the least. We did file a stormwater management plan with the commission that describes how we meet the state standard. So I believe that this is a suitable project that can be readily approved by the commission, and I'm ready to answer any questions you might have concerning the design.
Thank you.
Mike, what are the differences between the 2008 approval you got for the same project and now?
Well,
I
there's,
remember the reconfigurations of the floats.
well, the first thing is that the 2008 is long expired,
Well, I
So-
understand that, I'm just asking what the differences are.
all right? That, what you said in the 2008 was that as long as we reduced the footprint and reduced the piles, that you thought it was a suitable project, and there was an improvement of the material in the pilings because the piles out there are basically the old, they have tires in it. Not tar, but they have an asphalt.
Creosote.
Creosote in it, yeah. So there are 116 fewer pilings in this project compared to that, and there's 249 square feet less area. Plus, we now have vinyl-coated, CCA-treated, or non-leaching equivalent piles, so that we think that this is a better project. The public benefit that we've, there was a public benefit identified in 2008 in that as part of their waterways license, they have to allow the public to walk in a strip parallel with the waterways regulation. The additional things that we've added, obviously, is the stormwater management system, the installation of the boat wash pad and the tight tank containment system. So this is a better project
Then, back in 2008?
than the expired project.
Okay. Is there any dredging associated with this project?
There's no dredging. There's no dredging proposed with this
So
project.
basically, you're not modifying you're not really modifying the bulkhead part of it, you're just reconfiguring your piers, correct? And
Well,
adding your
but-
stormwater.
Backing up.
But we have to reinforce the bulkhead.
No, I understand
So
that.
we're driving the-
We've reinforced all of Inner Harbor
Yes,
over the past 10 years, so.
yes.
And the board received your cursory review from the town engineering department? Okay.
I also, you asked me, was there any evidence of any masonry structures, and I gave you a letter that I reviewed the earlier. This was built in 44 and 47, and they showed that this was a beach at the time. Hard to believe, but it was. So there was, we know of no masonry work. The Warmels did rebuild this back in the 70s or 80s, and so we don't think there's going to be anything behind the bulkhead that would interfere. There was interference at the entrance to the harbor where
yeah.
there used to be a bridge abutment. But anyways, we don't think there's anything here.
Okay. Nothing right now again?
come back if you need it. Courtney?
The existing tie rods are connected to dead men,
Yes.
and where are those located?
Where's the mouse? I'm sorry. If you look at this graphic, it shows the approximate location of the existing dead men. And what we did is that's from the license plan. And so the dead men are a substantial distance back. Then nominally, well, I'd have to scale it to no direct, but no, usually they're over 20 feet back. Setback depends on the
You know
depth.
that the tie rods are in good condition going back to them?
If they're not in good condition and the contractor tells us, we will have to basically install a new tie rod from the bulkhead back to the dead man.
Okay. I have no other questions.
Kevin?
Well, I'm sure there'll be some restrictions while you're under construction, so that you're not just protecting the harbor, but you're protecting Scranton Ave.
The time of year restriction.
I think,
It's gonna be a time of year restriction.
oh, there's the time of year restriction anyway, but you're also gonna have some comments on the fact that unless there should be some drainage out in Scranton Ave, and you don't want the construction to be affecting the drains out there.
Good condition, right?
If you look at the plan, there's a construction limit fence. So are you saying we need to put like something on the catch basins?
I think you're gonna get a comment on that.
Well, there's no question that when we file for building permit, there's another review that occurs, so.
I mean, it has a limit of work, so. Anything else?
That's it.
You ready?
Yes.
Huh?
I'll continue my search after I ask my questions.
So I asked her.
I just have a couple of questions, Mike. So you have these drains along the way that you say are gonna be a direct discharge?
Yes,
Do you need, do you need a special permit for that?
not that I'm aware of. The zoning bylaw doesn't require special permits for that. We probably are going to talk to the building commissioner because this will probably require a Board of Selectmen special permit.
The DEP doesn't require something for direct discharge of stormwater?
I do, yeah.
Well, if so, we'll file it.
Okay. My next question is, when you're counting the piles, you're counting the tie-off piles as well?
Yes,
You're counting all the piles that have to be driven?
yes.
Okay. And the third question I have is you're talking about, somewhere you were talking about steel piles?
Yeah, the steel piles are under the travel lift.
Does that, I mean, I know that happens in places, but is there problems with electrolysis with that?
They're coated so
They have
that
some kind of zincs on them, or?
they have a coating that is supposed to prevent them from rusting. And
Okay.
they normally have some cathodes also.
Okay,
They were designed by a structural engineer, and so I know he has significant experience with the steel piles. The steel piles, for instance, are being used down at Woods Hole.
yeah,
for
I mean,
major construction.
I'm sure they're used, and I don't know that much, you know, I vaguely remember in chemistry and knowing people have problems with electrolysis in the marine environment. But so I'm just curious.
The
yeah.
steel piles are stronger too, so
Yeah.
we don't need to drive as many.
That's all I have, thank you.
Russ?
How long do you think this project's gonna take? I mean, it's pretty intense.
I mean, we're talking months, let's face it, start to finish.
Yeah.
Months. And they want to be open, so they may do some of it,
So there might be some phasing involved.
might do some phasing involved.
Okay, thanks. That's all I got.
Mike, do you know how they're gonna phase it in?
No, but there is a timer, there is a certain time they can't do work. So
No, I understand
they're,
that.
it's going to be a whole bunch of things, but they do want to keep the place open, and only do portions at a time. We haven't figured that out until we get approval.
Thank you.
Couldn't give us a phasing methodology or something like that?
The only way I could do that is if he hires a contractor. I mean, it'd be a suitable condition to file, a month before they start or something.
Couldn't we do that in a pre-construction?
Because they haven't hired a contractor, so I'd be describing,
There's a lot of variables that would come into effect. I mean, just a machine breaking down could mess you up for a couple of weeks, so I was just curious more than anything else, so. But it's probably not a bad idea at some point to have something like that.
Yeah,
You know.
before work starts, it would
Yeah.
be nice to have, I mean,
it's a suitable condition for the contractor to file a schedule with you.
Yep, I'm sorry, yeah, I'm all set. Keep getting interrupted.
Is it my turn?
Yeah, it is.
I'm waiting for the chair.
All right,
There you
Steve.
can go on, Steve, I'm thinking.
All right, I'm sorry if this is mostly educational, but the vinyl sheet piles, you're gonna drive them behind the bulkhead,
Yes,
but, and the existing bulkhead will remain
yes.
forever, you suspect, although you said it's deteriorated.
It's deteriorating, but that's the way we've done it. We've done like 5 projects
Right,
where we've driven behind. So,
okay, so you drive these sheet piles behind, they just, s- cut through the soil and right down into the ground. They don't make a trenching,
now, these are you see the outline?
Yeah.
What I'm showing?
right,
And that's a channel, and they actually put a hammer on it, and they drive it down. And it's actually, it's that funny S-shaped, and there's a bead that fits inside.
right,
And I've watched it, it goes right in.
right. But when they drive them down, they're gonna cut through the dead men.
They're gonna take the dead men out.
Oh,
They take the dead men out, drive it, then they reinstall the dead men.
And they remove the dead men by pulling them out into the water?
They excavate down into to expose the dead men, and I'm not specific how they do the
Okay.
removal.
'Cause, the question was revolving the trenching.
Well,
If they're 20 feet into the parking lot, or,
no, if you look at this section,
Right.
BB, in general, I mean, this is an approximate excavation, but they can come back more if they need to. And what they generally do is they'll come back to where this, and this is something I saw them do it twice. It was pretty fascinating.
okay,
Yeah, so,
I haven't, so I'd be fascinated as
Yeah.
well. All right, thank you.
Point you monitor.
Yeah, it's pretty cool to watch, though.
Right.
Yes, you'd like that.
Fascinating.
I would like
Yes.
it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, that's it.
You're welcome. So we have a time year restriction,
yes.
and most of this will be done upland or a barge,
well, yeah.
the piling's on a barge.
Well, what, they could reach,
Right from the shore.
they can probably, well, there are certain marine contractors could reach that, but it'd probably be better to do with a barge. Yeah, It's just, these are so far out.
She wants me to read this.
Okay.
Scott
Scott,
Schutler, town
town
engineer,
town
engineering
engineering
department.
department.
That's fine.
Oh, I haven't seen it.
Well, I'm gonna read it to you,
All right.
and then there'll be a copy in the record. I took a look at the plans, and all the work is along the harbor and outside our right-of-way. However, with all the hauling of debris and materials from the demolition and the construction, we'd like to see some information on the plans for a construction entrance or other protection for Scranton Ave and our drainage system in front of the property. We'd like to see silt sacks for the catch basins in front of the parcel for the duration of the construction.
So that came up
That's an
earlier.
appropriate condition. We'd agree with that.
When are you gonna submit your construction plans to the engineering department then?
What you'd like me, I guess what you're saying, that I should go down and file one right away that describes how we're gonna protect the catch basin.
Yeah, and information on the plans for where the construction entrance is.
Where is your construction entrance, Mike?
I would use both of them, to be blunt, because these piles are brought in by tractor trailer. So you want to come in one way and go out the other. So if you've seen the site in the winter, it's full of boats.
Yeah.
So tractor trailers are going in there all the time to drop off. So bottom line is I will, to me, they should go in and go out. That's what we did when we did the town work. We went in one entrance and out the other. So it'd be appropriate to do that.
Okay,
Can't we condition that and
Yeah.
condition silt sack?
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
something you need.
Okay.
I only show one catch basin, so I hesitate because I should go out and look, see I was not focused on the street side. But I need to make sure that I show the right amount of catch basins.
Okay.
We're okay with that?
We okay?
Yeah, I'm good.
Anybody have anything else? Then I'll,
Motion to
No,
close the
we've done
hearing,
all
take
these
it on
all
advisement?
along Falmouth Inner Harbor, so.
you can say it louder, Russ.
Motion to close the hearing, take it under advisement?
Second.
Sorry, Susan. No.
We told them dial it back a little bit.
Yeah, I kinda.
Jen, you good?
told-
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion from the board? Any comments from the public? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of closing the hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Mike. This one's continued.
Next up, 160 Penzance has been continued. Timothy Leadham, trustee, RNG Realty Trust, 1209 East Falmouth Highway, East Falmouth, Mass. For permission to raise, RAZE, all existing buildings and appurtenances, including bulkheads, piers, and boat ramps, and to construct a new commercial building together with a complete redevelopment of the new pier, floats, bulkheads, piles, fuel dock, travel lift, parking lot, and stormwater management system. Mr. Costa, you're up.
Looking forward to this. Construction, not the hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Matt Costa, Cape and Islands Engineering. I'm here tonight with Raul Lizardi Rivera, also from Cape and Islands Engineering, attorney Kevin Clower from Ament and Clower, and the applicant, Mr. Tim Leadham, owner of Bosun's Marine, East Falmouth. We're here tonight under a Notice of Intent application to essentially raise and rebuild the entire marina. The marina is located in East Falmouth along Childs River. The portion of Childs River here in front of the marina is not classified as a river. Under the Rivers Protection Act, the north side of the Childs River area is classified as a river.
I know.
site has a long history of being used as a marina. You can see from this aerial photograph taken in 1960 that it was established and used at that time, obviously predated the Wetlands Protection Act. Current site has all the appropriate permits to function as a full operating marina. You see from the yellow outline, that is the actual parcel. And on this parcel, we have a series of very large buildings. You'll see in this area here, that's all one building that's been added onto over the years. There's also another large building over in this area, various improvements throughout the site. And you see all of the dockage out here. These are all the docks owned and operated by Bosons. Existing conditions for the site in your resource areas are land under the ocean, land containing shellfish. Now, we did not do a shellfish study on this area. We're presuming that shellfish is in this area. This area is closed to shell fishing, and the project has been reviewed by the Shellfish Constable. Also, there is a salt marsh area, and if you look at my mouse here, you see there's actually two little salt marsh shelves right here. Those shelves were a condition of a previous permit, and those are existing salt marsh areas today with the appropriate buffer zones to them. Also on this site are coastal banks. There's a coastal bank along East Falmouth Highway and cuts across the street in that area. All of the buffer zones are shown on the plan in green as buffer zones A and B under your regulations. Also is a large portion of the site is within land subject to coastal stored flowage. You see here's the flood zone boundary in this area here. And that covers it for the resource areas. Oh, this is also a fish run. I knew there was another. Just some quick project statistics before we get into the plans. The area of existing buildings, we have 28,000 square feet of building area. We're gonna drop that down to 6,000 square feet. A serious reduction in building area. We have existing 48 slips, 2 moorings. We're gonna be going to 49 slips and removing the 2 functioning moorings. The existing pile count's 261. When this is done, there'll be a reduction to 237. Your net change in your buffer zone areas, your net change in development within the buffer zone areas is gonna be a negative 6,700 square feet. And I'll show you how we get there. We're actually gonna create new resource area here. We're gonna create new area of land under the ocean, 4,000 square feet of that area, and we're gonna be relocating the salt marsh areas that exist. The proposed project includes the commercial building located in the center, surrounded by parking areas with various improvements along the shoreline and complete reconfiguration of all the docks. Also, as part of this proposal is dredging, and I'm going to go through each step. For our upland site work, we're going to be constructing the new building, the new parking area. There will be a wash pad here. This wash pad will have a recycling system that will function to capture and recycle the wastewater that will then be removed from the site as necessary. It's the same type of system that Bosons uses at their other sites. And this is very similar. We're in the middle of construction at the Mashpee Neck Marina, and this is a very similar setup that's being used over there. The entire parking lot will be rebuilt. We're gonna grade this parking lot so that we catch all the runoff from it. And we're also, once we get to the stormwater management plan, we'll show you how we're actually dealing with some runoff that's coming from East Falmouth Highway. We're gonna utilize the existing leach pits that are up in this area here, and we'll be connecting to those and installing new septic tanks. For our shoreline work, we're going to rebuild all of the bulkheads, and we're gonna change the shoreline. And I have another plan that clearly exhibits that for you. But in this case, we're gonna be doing all new bulkheads along the complete shoreline of the marina. And then a series of fixed piers and floating piers then being installed along with those or afterwards. And there will be a travel lift installed over in this area over here. This plan shows our areas of dredging and filling. So what's happening is we have a series of boat ramps, ramps that go into buildings in some cases. And one area over here is the actual boat ramp where they pull the boats from the site. So there'll be some filling in brown in those areas there of the boat ramps. And then there, in this area of the bulkhead, we're realigning the bulkhead here, so we're actually filling a portion in front of the existing bulkhead here. The purple is the area where is upland now, but will become land under the ocean. So we're actually cutting back all of that purple area there. And everything in green is gonna be our dredge footprint. Will be, if you, one thing I didn't point out is if you look on our site plan, you'll see the bathymetric survey that was done, and it's colored coded, so you can see where the depths are, and what those depths are. Those are all based from, the depths that we show are based from mean low water. There's various details on the plans over specifics on the bulkheads and things like that, and I'm not gonna get into the details. If you have any particular questions about the details at the end, we can go over those. This plan right here shows some our site utility layout. You can see first that the building's being connected to a septic tank and a pump chamber that would then be pumped up and leached into the existing leach pits. We have a series of drainage structures on the site that will capture both roof runoff from the structure and runoff from the pavement, the site area, in the front of the site. And we'll also, in this back portion of the site, what we're doing is we're gonna slope the entire site over into a drainage swale. And then that drainage swale will have an overflow for when necessary, where it would discharge into Childs River. Right now, just about the entire site discharges into Childs River. Also, we have a large amount of stormwater that actually comes off of Route 28. And we have started questions, and we're gonna be trying to work with Mass Highway and getting them to make some improvements there. But in our design, we're figuring on those improvements not happening for a long time. So we're made some provisions to capture and help mitigate that stormwater. What happens is you'll see along the highway, there's a couple of existing catch basins. Those basins get overrun pretty quickly in a rainstorm and a short circuit right down the hill onto our property. And what happens is that it runs right across the ground right into Childs River. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna, on our property, where we're allowed to, we're gonna stabilize that slope with some native grass plantings and give it a stone spillway into the drainage swale. This drainage swale is gonna act as both to capture the stormwater and treat it prior to discharge, and act as a reserve capacity. So there is a standing water level in there. The water level will be able to rise in there in hopes that we'll get as much leaching through the drainage swale as possible and reduce the amount that needs to spill into Childs River. In any event, all stormwater that would enter Childs River will now be pre-treated, and that's a significant improvement from the existing conditions. In this design, we have it designed in accordance with DEP stormwater management standards. When we complete all of the work, we'll be landscaping the site. There's gonna be an area along the highway where we're gonna landscape with native grasses. It's an area that's highly exposed to a lot of debris coming off the highway. The grasses do really well for stabilizing the sides of highways. There's a pretty good slope over there too, or as well, and native grasses are a really good fit for this area. We're gonna put a couple of native trees over there as well. We're gonna be using some New England coastal salt-tolerant grass mix for the drainage swale. And we're gonna use a mixture of grasses and native shrub, a thorny shrub that actually will run all along the edge of the parking. And that will act as a stabilizer for the slope, because there was a slope transition there. And it will prevent people, the thorny shrub that we chose, will prevent people hopefully from will discourage people from cutting through in those areas. Over in this area of the site, we're gonna replant with native shrubs. Mixtures are all called out on the plan, and native trees, and we'll carry that up along the property line in this area here. We believe the project exceeds all applicable performance standards as we have articulated in our narrative. The existing site is located within a marine zone district. It's been historically used as a marina for many years. It has all the appropriate permits in place, and is in need of repair. I think if you've been to the site, you will see that it's far from its former glory, and it's time to do something. The project, when completed, is gonna have a net reduction in developed areas. It's gonna have major improvements to stormwater management. It's gonna have an increase in resource areas. It's gonna have an increase in natural vegetation. And we're gonna have improvement to navigation. So this is really a win-win. So with that, we respectfully request you would issue order conditions, and we're available to answer any of your questions.
Thank you.
Yeah, a couple of things, Matt. You're redoing your whole bulkheads, right? Obviously. You going in front, or you're just gonna reconstruct the whole front? Are you reusing any of the bulkheads, or you just,
They're all gonna come out.
they're all gonna come out? Okay.
Yes.
When's the last time the site was dredged like that? Do you know the last time?
There's a project, I don't have it off the top of my head, but there's a section in our narrative for project history, and that should be listed in the project history. It shows
Okay.
all of the permits.
I was just trying to find that real quick, I never read it. Okay.
Six has a history page.
I'm just gonna say this up front, unlike the one we just saw, this has a number of other elements to it, including dredging, creating new resource area, relocating salt marsh. And I had talked to Matt a while ago when he first approached me that we might, or the staff might recommend, this go out to an outside consultant for review. There's just a lot of different elements to it.
The project as a whole.
The project as a whole, yeah. And the town engineering department had some concerns. Matt, where's your construction entrance?
We'd be going out on Whitings, right here.
The town road?
Yeah, there's a curb cut right here on East Falmouth Highway as well.
It's with the podium. Name for the record, please. Speak into the microphone.
I keep walking.
Good evening, my name is Tim Leadham, I'm the owner of the property, and what I could share is that when I purchased the property, and that was in the winter of 11 and 12, we were concerned about access onto 28 and the, you know, the speed of the traffic, all the customers' vehicles, everything coming in and out. And a few years later, we worked with Falmouth Engineering, tying in with the White's Landing Road project. And at that time, we had just a little cut access in here off White's Landing, and the property primary entrance and exit was on 28. So as this project was done, we worked, matter of fact, I came to the commission, we worked with the town and we did an exchange whereby we gave an easement on the corner of my property. And it cut off the angle so that the road could sweep around and, you know, everyone from the public landing here could get their vehicles in and out of the parking lot and up on the road in a safer manner, because everything was very restricted. So we did that, and I made a commitment to the town that when we did that, we would also cut off and stop using that side entrance on 28, which is safer for everybody, including my employees, our customers, people on the highway, everybody. So we've already gone over, and this is all completed in here. And as part of the you know, if you were out to the property, you'll see that there's new fencing in there, there's new gates, the entrance is wider. It can handle big tractor trailers with boats. So we're all set in that regard. We won't be coming in and out off of 28. Everything will be accessing from White's Landing Road.
And I can better answer the question. Raul pointed out to me that there's actually another area on the site that we'll be using. And we put a gravel wash pad here because this is where the existing boat ramp is now. So trucks could pull in here and we could demo this building and then remove it from the site. There may be some trucks leaving from this area here too. But we did figure in for a wash pad for washing the trucks down before they leave.
Is there any way that area is gonna be kind of protected from washing those trucks down? And have you,
A limit of work surrounds it with the sedimentation control.
Okay.
And that's another thing that I didn't point out, is this plan shows what we're doing for sedimentation control. And we actually do carry all of the town's notes that were given to us from the engineering division for site controls and erosion controls. We're gonna be putting in some stone check dams right away in these areas here, because these ramps run into the building. And then these buildings, we're looking to get these buildings down like right away. If you've seen them, you know that this one's gonna start coming down if we don't take some action. So we're looking to get them down right away. Once that opens up the site, we're looking to have any trucks carrying materials leaving here that will be accessed through here as well.
and the salt marsh, how do you propose to replicate the salt marsh?
We would build the bulkhead, the primary bulkhead first, and then the shelves would be built second.
By who?
Contractor. We haven't chosen a contractor yet.
You're gonna have a marine contractor rebuild little salt marshes?
A contractor.
A contractor, okay.
We have worked with LEC, and I would probably have LEC consult on any,
Okay,
if the board, when we have done wetland replication before, the boards, other conservation commissions had require a monitoring program with it, and somebody to oversee that. So if that is a requirement, we would use LEC.
and have these other conservation commissions actually asked to see the replication plan? We're gonna need to see a replication plan for the salt marsh, Matt.
Yeah,
We're gonna
it's-
have to.
it's not a problem.
Thank you. So, I mean, like I said, there's just a lot of little elements, there are a lot of elements to this. It's going to be a huge improvement to the site, we just have to make sure that it's reviewed, and it's just too big of a project for our engineering department to take on a review like this. So, the staff's recommendation would be to send it out to an outside consultant. The town has vetted consultants, so it's not going to take very long to identify where we could send this out fairly quickly next week and get some proposals back.
Yeah, I did talk to, I met with Jen
Yeah.
several times throughout this design phase over the last year. And we did talk about that. We just asked that if we could just have that process happen quickly.
The good thing is like, the town has already vetted, several engineers to oversee all types of reviews for the town. And so, I mean, that would be, I can quickly send those out next week and get some feedback back from those, consultants on proposal costs and timeframes for you. Unfortunately, I just can't, I couldn't start that process until the board.
And that could be one of those recently approved,
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
just to expedite the
Yeah,
process.
yeah, to expedite it. So, that's the thing that we would recommend at this point. I mean, it's going to, it's going to improve, I mean, it's going to be an improvement what's there. Prior to the hearing, the, property owner, I know is very concerned about the main building and its condition. And if during the review, something had to be done to the building to secure it, we would work with the building commissioner to either, take the building down or secure it during the ongoing review, if it was a concern.
When are you looking to start the project? Obviously, we get approval.
We have time of year restrictions all over this one, too.
Yeah.
Well, we would like to talk about the time of year restrictions as well, but we're looking to demo, that would be the first phase as soon as possible. There's trailers on site right now that people are working on it because the mold in the buildings has reached a level that they can't occupy it.
I understand
work
that,
with Rob
but
on
I
that,
mean,
no?
we can't,
So,
we can't not have a proper review of the project, because, you know, it's been there, it'll continue to be there.
Right.
We'll just expedite it as much as possible.
that's what we're asking.
No, oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. There's just a lot,
I don't think so.
there's a lot to
We could, but I
this.
don't think the building.
A lot more than to Scranton. It's a much
They wanna
bigger
see it.
project. We're creating resource area, we're filling, we're relocating or replicating salt marshes. We wanna make sure the stormwater's correct. There's the dredging that has to be looked at. So I just want to make sure that it's just properly reviewed, so that we have a good project.
Well, they have a plan.
I mean, the town has invested a lot, the state has invested a lot into that area, and I think any improvement to this, boatyard would just, I mean, it's just gonna enhance that whole area from White's Landing and the newly constructed boat ramp. Twice constructed boat ramp.
Can I suggest that?
Wanna go into
Can
that.
I suggest that?
In a minute.
That's all for right now.
Steve?
Being East Falmouth representative, I'm looking forward to this happening as quickly as possible. I understand the concerns. I've walked the site many times since we looked at the boat ramp so many times, and the house beside the boat ramp. So I spent a lot of time in this particular neighborhood looking at the site. I'm surprised at the water depth. They're actually deeper than I would have guessed in many cases. Being a sailor, not a power boater, I haven't been up this way. But I was interested in the dredging as you move forward. So you're gonna bring it all to 4 feet?
Yes.
And there is an existing channel that is of that depth beyond your property, not your concern, obviously, so I'm just curious.
Right. Yes, that's exactly it.
And the bulkhead reconstruction is behind the existing bulkheads?
It varies, and that's what
It
this,
varies.
that's what this plan right here is demonstrating. Is it's really hard to show you with so much going on, just a simple grayed out existing with the new
Yep.
on top of it. So we colored it out here to try to show you that.
Right,
It was very helpful, actually.
right.
So that's the new line.
Right, and And that's all I have.
Matt has done a great job with, and his whole team, they did a really great job. I guess the message that I just want to convey is that we've all been really involved in this for a long time, and what we're trying to do is this property was built out over 100 years.
Okay.
So you had a wall and a wall, going like this all along the waterfront. The same with the buildings. And we're trying to, within the scope of what's reasonable and what we're working with, to simplify it and clean it and give it the right bones. And declutter, make things work correctly. It's not a big apartment complex, it's nothing like this. We're just trying to make it the proper kind of bones that if it were all done or conceived of today at one time, rather than being pieced over decades and decades. So that's just kind of the message. And they've done a great job of putting all those pieces together.
I think this is an excellent project. I'm not in favor of the review, but I just think this is well done. It's gonna be a huge improvement for that area. That's it.
It is, I agree. I think it's a nice project. I have a question and a comment. The harbor master requested 4 moorings be removed. You're removing 3, is that correct?
Yeah, we're keeping one as a channel marker, which he confirmed would be okay. Let me get a better plan for you. This guy right here, they actually don't tie to that. They use that as a marker, literally as a channel marker.
Yeah.
So the harbor master suggested maybe changing it from a mooring ball to something else, which is what we'll probably do.
Okay. But you're forfeiting 3 others.
Correct. That's the improvement to navigation. We're gonna open that area up.
I mean,
Yep.
working with them, that's good.
That's tight in there.
And just, I don't know if it's more of a question or a comment about the road runoff. In your narrative, you state, or somewhere in here I read it, that in your calculations, you've included road runoff. Is that a fair assessment?
We've
You've
included,
allowed for that volume, I guess, I know it's not your problem, I'm just, what I read.
Good evening. For the record, Raul Lizardi from Cape and Islands Engineering. So what we're allowing is for what's currently happening on the site, which is some overcharge runoff coming from 28 to continue to happen
Yeah.
until that time that the state improves on their own drainage. We're just allowing for that runoff volume to continue onto our project and to pass through the proposed drainage swale as pretreatment before it reaches Charles River. But we are not designing for the
Yeah,
town
that-
road.
I didn't mean to state it that way, but, okay.
And if I could clarify something from earlier, a direct discharge is what is called when the pipe actually discharges runoff water directly into a wetland or a river or a water feature without pretreatment. So if there's a pretreatment before a pipe that's discharging over a bulkhead, that is not considered direct discharge. Just wanted to make that.
Well, good, I don't have to
Clarification.
ask that question then.
Thank you.
so yeah, what you saw on Scranton was actually pre-treated before it was discharged.
Yeah.
And
Go ahead.
Title V, Sam.
So before I have some questions, but before I ask the question, I want to get back to the fact that the buildings some of the buildings need to be demolished sooner rather than later. Couldn't that be an RDA?
No, that's a big building. I mean, if you wanted to look at it in an RDA, I mean, it would have to
We-
have a
we-
really detailed methodology on how it's being taken down.
I'll speak to that quickly, just for the record. Kevin Clower, attorney with Ahmet Clower, a law firm here in Falmouth. I don't think the request is to remove the buildings today by any stretch of the imagination, because we have these buildings are very non-conforming in a number of ways from a zoning perspective. And this building will essentially comply with all zoning regulations, but we would want to preserve that nonconformity, and we're applying to the planning board for a special permit.
I was just trying to expedite.
Have you applied to the planning board yet?
No, because we just realized we needed one for,
Have you applied to zoning?
we don't need a special permit from zoning.
So you haven't applied to planning?
No, because we just realized that it would be considered parking in a front yard. So we can have
When
that
was that realized?
Friday, when I was reviewing this with Matt, and it dawned on us that that was,
I don't see how that changes anything.
It changes things because the Wetlands Protection Act states that you need to apply for all obtainable permits prior to applying.
I can have that application submitted within a week,
Okay,
and will.
okay.
My apologies. I'll take the blame for that one, Ms. Lincoln.
Okay,
And
back to my
RDA,
questions.
back to that, I mean, I don't think the buildings are coming down tomorrow, so you could have a review. I think it's prudent, I know some of you don't think it's prudent, but I do think it is very prudent. The staff does not recommend these reviews lightly, so.
So,
Time of year restriction, Matt?
we do want to take good point. So we do want to take the buildings down as fast as possible. We want to get through this process as fast as possible. I appreciate the creative thinking on ways to help us get that done quicker. That is probably not necessary. What we would really appreciate is just you helping us get through the review as fast as possible.
Right,
So
to
that,
expedite
yeah,
having an outside review and then making a decision, and then you move on.
that would be the greatest outcome right there. So on the time of year restriction, if now would be appropriate, I believe it was Division of Marine Fisheries requested a pretty lengthy one from January to June for anything creating turbidity. Because of the very tight site timelines dealing with trying to get a marina functioning and keeping cash flow working right, we would like to have the bulkhead work where the silt curtain pulled up closely against it excluded from that time of year restriction. Where all the piling work done and the dredging work, obviously, all that work adhere to the time of year restriction. But winter is gonna be the time we're gonna wanna do this bulkhead. So if we can, and a lot of it is actually gonna be in upland area. So if we can exclude the bulkhead from that time of year restriction, we could have a silk curtain just pulled up tight against that area.
Have you had a discussion with Eileen Feeney at DMF about this?
I have not.
You need to have
Herring,
that
it's herring
discussion.
that-
What?
It's herring, it's not,
Oh, I understand that.
I mean, the first
So
part is
Matt,
winter flounder, but
the
it's a.
board
it's a
always has
herring.
to recommend the time of year restrictions by DMF. I know DMF has worked with applicants before to issue waivers from certain, time of year restrictions or modified, so that's a discussion I would like you to have with Eileen
Well, yeah,
Feeney
there
prior
are-
to that. You're
Understood.
gonna need a new chapter 91 license, you're gonna need a whole lot of permits because of the small salt marsh, because of the dredging and everything else. And DMF is gonna be commenting throughout that for chapter 91.
Yeah, they already sent their comments, and it was pretty reasonable, just the
Yeah.
time of year restriction, basically. But DMF is not the regulator here, you guys are. You take their comments into consideration. So that's what I'm saying and asking of you. I will be happy to talk to Eileen about it, to see if we can get her on board with that. But that's why I'm making the comment.
Oh, I understand that. The DMF is an advisory board, but the DMF also relies on regulatory boards and agencies to uphold the protection of marine fisheries on their behalf. They put these waivers in or time of year restrictions in for very specific reasons. And they have, as I said, and I know of one in North Falmouth, where they worked with the applicant who was doing a bulkhead to, and I forget what they call it, not waive the time of year restriction, but if you start work by a certain time. So that is a discussion I would like you to have with either Ryan or Eileen at the Division of Marine Fisheries to see what you can work out with them and what their guidance would be to this commission going forward, because I would not recommend the commission modify the Division of Marine Fisheries time of year restriction recommendation without getting more information on, why they have it there, what other precautions can be taken to protect, the herring. So I would like you to have that conversation with Eileen and not ask us at a hearing to modify a time restriction from a state agency.
Well, understood.
I understand.
I'm starting the conversation.
I understand,
This
and
is
I'm
basically
telling
an
you which
intro
direction to
night.
take that conversation.
We look forward to seeing what you come back with.
I know she's worked, I'm gonna honestly say it was a very small bulkhead. It definitely wasn't this extensive, but I know that they have worked with applicants in Falmouth, and that's the only one I can think of besides the town, on the modification
Certain
of
pieces,
a time of year restriction for bulkhead work.
For that.
Not looking for the whole thing.
Yeah, but it's,
And like I said,
process is.
Jamie, they have, you know, DMF is gonna have to make that recommendation or
understand.
come back to us. And I know they've worked with applicants before. Like I said, it wasn't this extensive, but I know they have.
But he's asking for a
Specifically
certain
for one
piece
in
of it, not
Bayrock.
the project as a whole.
No, I know that.
Well, I know.
Yeah.
That's what
That's the
counts.
conversation he has to ask with her. She'll get back to us.
We understand this is not being finalized tonight.
No, oh no, but, I mean, I know they'll work with you, Matt. Or they'll give you some guidance, how about that?
My turn? I know
Still, you're still on the clock.
I
You're
haven't, I
running
haven't
out.
asked any questions yet. First of all, I want to say that this is going to be a great project when
Yeah.
it's done. And there are a lot of little elements in it that I really like. Like, I like your idea of having thorny shrubs. I think that's a good idea. I was going to suggest poison ivy too. But not everybody recognizes poison ivy is the problem. But I am a little bit, still a little bit unclear. So were your Charles River pink, is that 6 feet?
No.
It's more than 4, greater than 4.
And then you go down 3, 2, 1? I mean, what,
Yeah, what are the,
it's 1 foot
1
increments.
foot increments.
All right, so, all right. And the idea, when you're gonna get fill from somewhere and fill in, presumably, yeah, so that's gonna be like sand fill?
Yep.
And then, what are you gonna do with your dredge material?
Dewatered on site and then hauled off.
Okay, and the salt marsh, I was also a little unclear. That you said the salt marsh that's there was required to be put in from a prior permit?
Yeah, it was part of a requirement from a prior permit.
And it seems to be, I mean, there's no way you would know how it's functioning, but it appears structurally to be fairly intact.
Yeah,
Well, I was
mean-
curious about how you said there was a shelf and then salt
This
marsh.
is a
Well,
ver-
Salt
this-
marsh is, you know what I'm talking about.
Mr. Leadham only took ownership a few years ago. This site has been used heavily throughout the years, and the salt marsh in that area shows signs of being surrounded from heavy use. So it's not a prime specimen, I guess.
But is it a real salt marsh? Is it on
Yes, there's
peat? Is
the-
it,
Yes,
is the current salt marsh on former salt marsh peat?
I can't,
Well, you talk about some kind of,
can't tell you if that's the case. I could tell you that there's salt marsh grasses there, and they get inundated from high tides.
but you don't know what's underneath. You haven't
I-
taken a core there.
No,
You can't give me that.
honestly, I
Betsy,
don't care what's
We'll
on.
go out and pour it for you, how about that?
I'll go with you.
Okay.
Go look.
Yeah, you guys can check it out.
Anyway, it's gonna be a great project. It's just,
It is gonna be a great project,
Just-
we just, it's just a very large, it's a very large project, and we just wanna make sure that, you know, the town's interests are protected. And like I said, these reviews take a tremendous amount of time from our engineering department, and the practice is going to be moving away from putting the bulk of all of the committee's reviews on the engineering department and move them to a outside consultant. And I think it will actually just result in better products for the town as well.
That's all I have for now. I'll look forward to questions the next time.
For now. Kevin?
It sounds like it's going to be a very beneficial project, but I think we're at this, what the heck do we do first stage, and I'd just like to see it get started, and maybe in,
All right, so 10 o'clock.
I'm guessing 4 or 5 months, you'll be able to know what sort of a project and what kind of a timeline you're gonna have before it can get finished.
I'm hoping we're through this process quicker than 4 or 5 months. I think what we do now is you guys pick a consultant and get that out there. Let us know what's happening with it, and let's get the review in front of them and get their comments back so we can review it and address anything that needs to be addressed, and then get it back in front of you so we can get this approved. That's a very simple path forward in my eyes.
And presumably you could start on some of it.
I don't even want to complicate it. I like to keep, I'm a simple-minded person. I keep it simple. Like,
What was that, Betsy?
consultant, review, comments,
Once
close.
they get all the permits, they can start with something. Okay,
I mean, it's gonna take a while to get through our review and then through chapter 91, correct?
Chapter 91 is a whole different animal. We're not
Yeah.
focused on that right now. We're here under your regs and Wetlands
Okay.
Protection Act, and that's what we want to get done.
I think everyone on the board thinks it's a great project. It's just, you know.
Except for Jen. No, I thought that's what you were saying, no.
It is a great
I,
project.
you know,
Never said that. I just heard that.
Moving on.
moving on, it's just that we gotta get through the initial steps, and so that everybody is doing something to get the project going. That's all I'm saying.
There's not much I can add. I think you guys have your marching orders. We have our marching orders, let us get it going.
I think it is good.
All right, so the first thing we wanna, anything else?
Continuance.
So we need a continuance.
So, just to start something, Matt, can you reach out to LEC or whomever that you work with and have them kind of go out and look at that marsh
The consultant's a good
area
idea.
and see what they can, what their opinion is?
Yeah.
That,
I'm not crazy about it.
because we don't, you know, with the more information that we can provide someone,
need to sign?
We will have that
Yeah.
to you faster than.
perfect.
Trust?
And reach
Necessary.
out, Eileen Feeney would be, I think, the appropriate contact over at VMF.
Yeah,
Reach out and look for some waivers on the time of year restrictions for that one, okay?
yeah, we know what we need to do on our end.
And, if you want, we can, well, I mean, what does the board want to do? Continue it?
I'd like to make a motion to invoke the consultant's fee.
Okay,
I second that.
And do we have to take a vote on that first?
right.
And then we get a continuance.
Okay, let me ask a question before we go to the second one. So you're voting to hire a consultant, right?
Yep.
What is your expected timeline for reaching out to that consultant and picking one? Do you
I
have
can reach out to
any
them, the
idea?
soonest I can reach out to them is probably Monday afternoon. I can compile everything and send it off and get it out to,
That would-
2 of the 5 vetted.
That's terrific.
And then our next meeting is the 18th, and there could be a vote on the 18th, and
Yeah,
Vote for-
we could do that. We might have to kick the can down the road depending on.
And then how long is he gonna take?
well, you give a date as to what.
Well, I mean,
Well, we
I
need a
would-
date certain
No, I'm
now,
just-
so let's
I
just pick
would-
that.
Yeah, I would do a date certain of probably, I mean, the 25th of March. 'Cause I'm gonna get that to them next week. I don't expect, an answer back right away, maybe towards the end of the week if they can give me a proposal and a time frame. So, I mean, that's definitely not gonna be on the
Well,
18th.
can't you give them a time frame? Can't you say a 2-week review?
I can see.
I mean, that's part of,
Yeah, but a
Their-
2-week review, you would also wanna get their report back to Cape and Islands. for
We'll
review.
take the report as fast as we can get it. If we
Yeah,
need
I
to
would- I
continue
would
to
just
address, we'll
suggest-
do that.
based on these timeframes, to suggest a continuance to March 25th for, you know, a kind of a
Okay, we're getting ahead
status
of-
update, and we'll see. Hopefully, we can get everything, you know, out there and have a better idea of what the time frame is gonna be at that point.
Why would they come back on the 25th?
Right.
We need, we need to,
Don't have the
we need to continue it to a date certain. So I'm just saying, let's put it out there to the 25th, and if we're not all ready at that point, they can request an additional continuance. It just keeps it on the agenda, it keeps it moving forward.
It makes sense.
All right.
And that way, because if we didn't
No
go
way.
to.
I make a
We're gonna be
motion to
ready on the
continue to
25th.
They won't,
March
most likely,
25th.
we understand.
All right, wait a minute. Wait a minute. We're getting way ahead of ourselves here. We need to vote on a consultant first,
Correct.
whether we even want it.
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
So let's start with that. So we have a motion and we have a second to invoke the consultant review, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All those in favor of hiring a consultant, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed.
Okay. I make a motion to continue to March 25th.
Second.
So Matt, can you get me Eileen Feeney's
Did it pass?
comments?
Wait, did the consultant pass or no?
No, it
No.
didn't
No,
pass.
it's a tie. It does
Yeah.
not carry.
So what does that mean?
What are we continuing for?
You're continuing for maybe, I don't know, information from the Division of Marine Fisheries,
Division of Marine Fisheries,
Salt Marsh.
salt marsh information.
We'll have the engineer kind of go over something, see if the engineering department can pick up on something that they may be concerned about. And I just think it's prudent to continue it, to
Okay.
get this information
You
from.
probably would have had that anyway.
Yep, good, well, great. Thank you.
You okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. There's a motion, is there a second? Okay, so we have a motion and a second to continue until March 25th. Any further discussion from the board?
Wait a second. Don't we have a ton of stuff already on the 25th?
One of them fell off and is now on the 18th, so you can put it on the 25th.
Okay. One.
Any comments from the public? All right, all those in favor of continuing to 3:25, say aye. Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous.
This is gonna be a great project, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for the project.
Yep.
Yeah.
Does he own all the Bosons?
You know what?
Does he own all the Bosons?
I think so. No.
He's got balls. He carries more
Almost
inventory.
next.
I don't know how that works. I don't know if you have to buy those boats that are sitting in his yard.
I think
We're
they-
stalling
don't
for
they
30
pay
seconds.
So much. There's some sort of upcharge, isn't there?
Yeah. Gotta have something to move it over.
Question. On the vote for the consultant. What's the vote?
It was a draw, so it doesn't pass.
Was I
I thought it
voted
This
for
is a real good project.
You three voted for it, we opposed it.
Who was the third one? Oh, you opposed it?
Myself, Steve, and Russ.
Ah, okay.
It was all, you know, it was all Steve's fault.
It's always the left side. My left.
Moving on. Next up, continued hearings under notice of intent. The first three have been continued. Mary Ann Peschoat, 58 Cape Cod Road, Falmouth, Mass., for permission to raise RAZE, existing house, and construct a single-family dwelling and pool with all associated clearing, grading, and landscaping. And
Quorum is Courtney,
Courtney,
Betsy.
Betsy, Jamie, Russ,
Courtney,
Kevin.
Betsy, Jamie,
not Peter.
no. Yeah, Courtney, Jamie,
He's not here.
Betsy, Russ, and Kevin.
Kevin, Betsy. So Steve, you're not on it.
I'm not on this? Oh,
I don't
you're right,
believe
I'm
so.
not.
Not what I have.
Right, I remember. I want to find out why 57's related. What happened to all that,
One supplemental bit of information, it's just an aerial for some.
I'm not on the quorum, you don't have to give me anything.
Well, you got reading material now.
What happened to all the bamboo? I want to know.
No, I think that was that was part of the questions, isn't it? What are they gonna do with the bamboo?
The roadway there, from the old other project, from the
Oh, geez,
from
yeah.
last time?
I think that came
disappeared.
up.
It did.
I think it came
I
up.
don't remember anybody asking to take it out, but.
I think it was one of the storms.
Mike's here with his entourage.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, for the record, my name is Mike Policelli from Falmouth Engineering, and I represent the applicant. This is a continued hearing. If you recall, there were some issues and concerns that were raised at the initial hearing, and we continued it from February 5th to tonight so that we could address those. We've had a couple conversations with your staff subsequent to that. We've submitted revised plans. We retain the services of Blue Flex Design to comment on a certain aspect of the site, and we're here to present the information and answer questions and hopefully close the hearing. So one of the topics of discussion at the first hearing was the matter of the pool fence, security fence, and where it needs to be located for security. And it was suggested to us that we move it to the inner side of the mitigation plantings instead of the seaward side. We did some research, I should say Jen Malilla did some research, and we discovered if we use a certain type of mechanical pool cover that secures the pool, and no fence is needed at all. So we eliminated the security pool fence. Jen can elaborate on that if necessary. We have added the single rail, split rail fence that was discussed at the last hearing. Since we're not moving the security fence, we still would need a split rail, single rail fence along the edge of the mitigation planting, so that has been added to the plan. We added a area, cross-hatched area to the, I'm gonna call it the southeast side of the lot. You can see it on this exhibit up here. It's yellow, cross-hatching. This is the area of outer buffer zone B, where we're proposing to remove some vegetation to allow the project to proceed. And it's the area that was reviewed by Blue Flax Design as far as the value of the plant material and its wildlife habitat. And there's a report submitted that, and I'll just paraphrase, it concludes that there's a very low value to that area. In fact, it's effectively historically landscaped areas that have become overwhelmed by invasive plants. And the aerial photo I just provided to you exhibits that. I think if you look closely, and I'll put it up here, you can see if you look, I'll zoom in, if you look closely to this area, you see the leaves are off the trees when this area was taken, thankfully in 2014. There's a stone footpath that meanders through this area. There's a circle you see here. This is a bird bath that's there, ironically still there, but it's all invaded by vines. There's some, you can see very organized landscaping here. There's some lawn areas. And they're all under the canopy of this large tree. So that sort of illustrates what was there in 2014, and it's only gotten more invaded by invasives. So the report by Blue Flax Design goes into more detail on that. But I thought the aerial was kind of telling in what's the situation out there. Also realize that this area, notice outer buffer zone B is a sort of an island of overgrown vegetation that isn't connected or adjacent to any wetland resources. They're more to the west and northwest. In fact, the existing house is between that island of vegetation and the waterfront.
It's in a wetland resource, it's in a buffer zone.
It's in a buffer zone, yes,
That's a wetland resource.
right. But it,
It's defined by our wetland regulations.
okay, that's fine. Then let me clarify. It's not, it's isolated from wetlands resources such as coastal beaches, coastal banks, land under the ocean. It in and of itself is a wetland resource, yes, but it is in the buffer, outer buffer B, it is a landscaped area with invasive vines and things like bittersweet in it. I'm not gonna get into the detail on that, but I'm just trying to explain to you the value of it. We also provided to you a more comprehensive supplemental construction methodology. Commissioner Byrd had some questions about access to the waterfront if the building foundation has been constructed. And we outlined that in a letter, that the methods that would allow for the materials to still be delivered. There's about a 10 or 11 foot space between the building and the equipment that would be utilized to deliver materials to do the installation of the mitigation planting would be like a skid steer, a Bobcat type machine that would probably deliver plants and other materials either on pallets or just in groups of plantings around, and then the mini excavator or other piece of equipment would excavate the holes for all the planting material. We actually consulted with George Patello, who happens to be here for my other project, who is one of the potential site contractors, about how that work would be done, and he confirmed that it would be the way to do it, and that there's adequate access. We also submitted a revised mitigation plan that Centerline Design prepared that addressed some of your issues and concerns. But I think what I'll do first is turn it over to Teresa to talk about that vegetation in the outer buffer B zone. I have your plan here.
Good evening, Teresa Sprague with Blue Flax Design. I was contacted by Mike Borselli and Falmouth Engineering to go out and assess the area that Mike has outlined and that I'm showing in blue on the plan, basically just to assess the condition of the vegetation in the area and then make just some recommendations for what we would propose to do and some recommendations for ideas for planting. So in our analysis on page 3, well, first of all, I should just point out on page 2, we discuss what this report was intended to address. This is not intended to propose mitigation specifically. It was just intended to give an analysis of the existing vegetation and make some recommendations. So the report addresses the analysis of the existing vegetation within the subject area, some recommendations for vegetation management within that area, as well as some recommendations for restoration or enhancement of naturalized areas. So to create a naturalized area using some native plant species with high wildlife habitat value. We concluded, as Mike pointed out, that the subject area contains a mix of non-native, exotic, and invasive vegetation. The invasive vegetation we identified included border privet, shrub honeysuckle, vine honeysuckle, bittersweet, multiflora rose, barberry, and autumn olive. In addition to that, there are also non-native exotic vegetation, which includes Japanese spirea, yew, hydrangeas, and hinoki cypress. The majority of the dense invasive vegetation is found in the northern portion of the property, which is, here we go, here's the mouse, found in in the northern portion of the property. That north arrow is incorrect, I apologize for that. This is the northern portion of the property where the densest area of invasive vegetation is located. As you move further southward, as Mike was pointing out in that aerial, we see really what is more garden-like areas. And if you look on the images that I provided in the vegetation analysis on pages 3, 4, and 5, you can see that we actually have landscaped beds with corten steel edging, with lawn paths in between them. The ground cover layer in those managed portions of the garden beds consists primarily of fairly regularly spaced perennials. This time of year, hard to identify. It looks like probably a lot of daylily, perhaps some irises, with just areas of open ground between those plants. So our summary was that overall the existing vegetation within the subject area was low value. It does provide some cover habitat, but limited forage, nesting, breeding habitat value. And that invasive vegetation that's located within that area, and particularly the north, will continue to spread on this property and on neighboring properties if not properly managed. On page 7 of our land management plan, basically, we just make some recommendations for management protocols. We would propose and outlined what our recommendations are for removing the invasive vegetation, particularly the vine material be treated approximately 3 to 5 weeks before any clearing's done on the site in order for construction to happen. And that there's some follow-up management planned in that area if the goal for this area is to return it to a naturalized area without management. We recommend that woody vegetation be restored with a mix of canopy trees and shrubs, and have given as an outline for recommendations eastern red cedar, white oak, arrowwood viburnum, black chokeberry, bayberry, inkberry holly, as well as some sweet fern to go into the areas directly abutting the proposed leaching field up in this area here. This is an example. It is not meant to be a mitigation plan, and you can see it's an example restoration planting plan. This is certainly just meant to be a supplement to the plan that was provided by Jen Malila. The recommendations for these species, most of which are considered keystone species, were provided to improve biodiversity, wildlife habitat within the buffer zone while also protecting soils and supporting ecological services. On page 8 of our not a land management plan, of our analysis, our report, we give an example of the different species that we are recommending and the different habitat value that they provide, as well as resources for those. Again, page 9, the goal of this was simply to give an example of what could be planted back in this area and what we recommended. It was not meant to be an exhausting mitigation or restoration plan. And on pages 11 and 12, we include an index with invasive plant species found on site. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions about the existing vegetation, some of the proposed recommendations that we've made for this specific area on the property.
Thank you. Bill?
Mike, did you say how much vegetation was coming out in Zone B? How many square feet?
To accomplish the plan, the shaded blue area,
Yes,
2,700 square feet.
2,700 square feet. So, forgive me, but I'm kind of confused what an example plan is, Teresa?
So I was basically brought on and requested to just provide an analysis.
Okay. No,
So
that's
that's
all I need.
all, that's basically
No,
what I'm
that's fine.
saying.
That's
Okay.
Perfect, okay. So I think, Jen, thank you for redoing the landscape plan. I appreciate that. We are gonna put in condition, because I did check with, our building inspector on the auto cover, and he says as long as the specifications for the auto cover were supplied to the building department and met building code, then the fence wouldn't be required. So we will have probably just a special condition, just to protect, the board, I don't know why, that the specs be, submitted with the building department plans, be approved by the building department, and if they don't approve it and a fence is required, then the applicant would have to come back. Is that acceptable? Okay. As far as, I think that was the first thing, and then I saw on the, you had put the split rail fence and the fence, Mike, around the mitigation. And then the only, I think, outstanding issue was the removal of the vegetation in Zone B. The plan proposes to remove vegetation in Zone B, but only replace it where impervious surface lies. And I don't really think that was the intent of the regulations, is to allow an applicant to be able to remove vegetation in Zone B unless, and not replicate for it unless Zone A was completely full. So that's where the staff report was going with that. And example plan, Teresa, thank you, because I was a little concerned with the 25% of my favorite plant, and I'm being sarcastic, sweet fern, which prompted the smiley face in the email I sent you. So that's where the staff is, the board should, really look at allowing the vegetation in Zone B, unless you feel that they have, overcome the presumption that it is significant to wildlife habitat. I'm done.
Please start.
I realize that you would prefer, we'd all prefer to have native vegetation, mixed vegetation. However, I can't believe that you're proposing that it isn't serving. It's my saying to Jen one time about, what's that plant that I said?
Which one?
Plant that's outside my kitchen. Hydrangea.
Hydrangeas.
Hydrangea. Hydrangea's not, not a native,
Right,
et cetera, et cetera.
yes.
And I'm saying, I can look out my kitchen window, and it serves as habitat for birds who are sitting there eating other areas.
I agree, that's why I said it,
Birders
yes.
love this kind of habitat.
It's, I definitely agree with you that it provides cover habitat, without a doubt. I've written that into the report. But it doesn't provide forage habitat, nesting, breeding habitat necessarily, but it certainly provides cover habitat.
I've seen plenty of bird nests in this material.
And without a doubt, hydrangea, and particularly depending on what kind of hydrangea it is, so if it's macrophylla, it provides no other value whatsoever. It doesn't produce nectar, so it doesn't provide any other, there's no insect species that predate it,
But those shelters
are important.
really important.
Without a
especially if you
doubt.
have
Yes.
Cooper's hawks around.
Yeah. Do I think you could provide better cover habitat with a mix of cedar and mixing some deciduous
Oh,
with?
no,
Yeah,
I'm not faulting
yeah,
improving what's
Yes.
there.
Yeah.
And so I do have a question, and
Yeah.
that is that corner, which is the north,
this corner here,
yeah,
yeah,
the north.
the northeast,
east-
no, northwest corner.
North is this way, right?
Oh,
Is that
forgive
correct?
me, I thought this was,
The riprap is facing west.
oh, my apologies, I'm sorry. So that would be
Alright.
the southwest
The
corner.
southwest corner. Did you say that that's filled with invasive?
There are many other areas on this lot that have invasive vegetation, particularly.
Well, why not propose restoring those too?
That was outside of the scope that I was
Well, no, I'm
asked to
not
analyze.
Well, I'll answer
Saying to
that.
you, I'm saying it to Mike.
Frankly, we're petrified to touch an A zone. That's an A zone. I'm only proposing to do work in the B zone. I didn't think we could
I'd
do
agree.
anything in an A
You
zone.
certainly can do restoration of habitat in the A zone.
Excuse me, one thing, Mike, don't tell us you're scared to death of doing restoration in the A zone. All of your restoration on 8 Bridge Street was in the A zone.
Chairman?
Well, I guess we're missing the point here. You have very specific labels, no disturbance zone A. I don't know,
Have you done any
Categorically,
restor-
well, let me just
Teresa,
finish my
Have you
thought.
done any restoration projects in buffer zone A? You don't have to say who, what
Well,
engineer you
Well,
might have
well,
been working
well,
with.
If I could, Commissioner Gladfelter, I have two. But we hear mixed signals on what to do in an A zone. We didn't need to touch it, and I just heard you say it makes good cover, so we thought, no disturbance, if you don't need to disturb it, don't disturb it.
Basically, you're eliminating 50% of the buffer that was there that's gonna be gone with the expansion of the house. So you are providing some mitigation planning. This is all buffer, whether it's in the A zone or the B zone, it's all buffer zone vegetation. So I would suggest you add to what you have and restore that corner. So the whole area, it's gonna be better for the area of mitigation.
My experience with you folks has been that the area, this blue area, let's call it, that is between the house, I know what you said earlier about a buffer as a wetland resource, but your regulations say it's the goal of your regs is to try to enhance buffers to wetland resources as we commonly recognize them, like salt
Well,
marshes,
they are, I mean,
wetlands.
there's all,
Right.
our buffers overlap.
Right, so
an
what
area
this
like
project does is pull all of man's activities significantly further away from the beach, the coastal banks, and it makes way for enhancement in planting of native plants, i.e. the green area. So that's the true buffer to the more important wetland resources in my mind.
Wait a second. You were with us, you were helped when we wrote the buffer regulation.
Yes.
You probably remember me saying, I would greatly prefer to have a 600-foot buffer to our coastline all the way around.
I know that,
You
yes.
really want to protect things.
Yes.
But that's not practical, we know that, right?
Right,
So we
exactly.
worked hard,
Yeah.
and one of the things we said was, really, the whole 100 feet that's under our jurisdiction should be planted.
Right.
But we know that's not gonna happen because you have houses everywhere, right? So then we chose different resources, and we said a vernal pool, that whole buffer needs to be protected, right? So then we came up with these A and B zones.
Yep, different widths.
Right, and so, even though this is further back, it's still playing an important role. It's any vegetation there that's picking up water, it's picking up nitrogen, it's storing carbon in the roots. It's playing a really important role in the environment, protecting all the wetland resources.
But I guess what I think the point we're not making to you clearly is, we recognize that some of the values of that, but the report we provided says it's a lower value, and you just suggested that we should do some invasives management in the A zone.
In addition to what you
We're
have,
proposing invasives management in the B zone and then re-improvement with native plantings, so that you gain back that.
well, I'm saying you should come back, because you're taking that whole area out, you should give us more back, and it's much better for your,
We're happy to
for
do
your
that.
mitigation planning.
We're happy to do that. I was trying to stay out of doing any disturbance in A zones, just on this, the facts on this project seem to lend themselves to, there was no need to go in there, so why go in there? But we're happy to do that. We'll continue the hearing to do that.
Yeah, and just make that whole area of your lot
Yeah.
green, that
Yeah,
all be green, and it's all a
It'll all be
contiguous
connected.
buffer. right?
That's fine, we can do that.
That's all I have to say. He won't let
That
me
was
say another
plenty.
word.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Betsy. Kevin?
No questions.
Courtney?
Jim stole my pool cover question. So, the only other question I have is, the dry well that you show on your plan near the pool, is that for the pool, for flushing it and all that stuff? Or is this a saltwater pool?
Well, you know that, what's that, do you need to back, pump, backwash the pool or draw it down? Yeah, that could be, that is there, it's available for that purpose, yes, if need be.
And is it
Draw
sized
down.
properly? Is it sized properly, or,
I'm being told it needs to be 1,000-gallon capacity.
given the
It's
location?
sufficient for drawdown, it's not sufficient to empty the pool,
Yeah,
Huh?
but that's not,
it's
you're not
sufficient
looking
for
for that to
drawdown.
empty the pool, you're looking for a drawdown. I mean, that's typically what we've been looking for.
Yeah. So, it's there in case we need to draw it down for some maintenance, but we're never gonna empty the pool. It's not
Agreed.
that type of pool.
But you just said 1,000 gallons. Yeah, and I think typically they're 6 to 1,000, so,
Yes.
yeah, I mean,
What's the volume of pool?
sorry,
What's the volume of
30,000.
pretty
But you don't usually empty them, you just draw them down.
Yeah, I mean, my understanding is that saltwater pools, for example, don't need that
Right. No,
situation.
it's for maintenance or work or, you know, winter cover, what have you.
I mean, normally I wouldn't care, but its location, that's, you want to make sure it's adequate for the,
Yeah.
I'm good.
All right, so are we thinking of a continuance for,
and I don't, that's,
oh, I'm sorry.
I don't have any other questions, it's just,
So the only thing we're looking for is the revision to that southwest corner, is that correct?
Yeah, plan, incorporate all that. We don't have to be separated into separate colors.
Right, so is Teresa's portion, is that fair to say that, Teresa's portion of that becomes part of your plan?
Yes, we're gonna adopt her suggested plan, yes. So we can change the title to that, and when we revise to include the A-zone invasive management,
Okay.
we'll make it more specific that it's not just an example plan, it's the proposed.
Appreciate that. Okay. What do you think for timing, John?
Well, you guys are pretty
Busy through the
pretty
25th.
busy on the 18th and the 25th. So my suggestion would be the 1st, but, and it's up to the board.
If that's your suggestion, how do we argue with your suggestion? We'll take April 1st. Just don't call me a fool that day.
I can't promise that, but I'll make that motion to
You
continue
can call
to
it
April
that full
1st.
back, though.
second.
What was that?
Is that Teresa's, let me ask one other
What?
question. Is that Teresa's white oak?
That's my white oak.
That was my smile for the week, the plan.
Because we included a white oak?
What is it? No, what is it?
Do you want to put it on?
Oh,
a different date?
is it because of this shadow
first?
here?
No, I kind of like it.
It's, I've had a couple of confusing comments. This is just this is AutoCAD.
Well, I didn't get
Just-
what
it's-
this,
It's casting a shadow.
yeah, I like it.
Okay.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Do we have a motion? I made a motion. I don't know if anybody seconded
I'll
it.
second
I
it.
did.
There you
Okay,
go.
so we have
Who cares?
a motion and a second to continue to April 1st.
Before you vote, I just want to be clear that it's being continued for the specific purposes of updating the invasives management plan and changing it to not a suggested plan, but an actual plan that we're going to execute.
That's my
No
understanding.
other,
My understanding.
no other questions? No other issues?
Yes. Anything else you saw, John?
No.
Nope. That is it. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion from the board? All those in favor of continuance to April 1st, say aye.
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 Opposed? It is unanimous.
Thank you.
All right, now's the time to take a half an hour break, I think.
Make it an hour.
Poor guy's been here since the beginning. Let's get it done.
Next up, request to amend existing order conditions. Racing Beach Association, Inc., 0 Racing Beach Avenue, parcel 012-000, Falmouth, Mass., for permission to amend DEP SE 254514 to include the installation of a new pipe from the western side of Racing Beach Avenue to the eastern side of Racing Beach Avenue, and to install a small stone head wall on the eastern side of Racing Beach Avenue to support to side slope of the roadway. I don't know about that English, but
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, Mike Borselli, Falmouth Engineering. I represent the applicant, Racing Beach Association. I'm joined tonight by George Botello, the contractor that will do this proposed work. You may recall, we were issued an order of conditions to do some improvements to the piping that leads from the drainage ditch on the east side of Racing Beach Avenue to the waters of Buzzards Bay, and we were proposing all our work was proposed on the western side of Racing Beach Avenue. And at that time, we talked about, we suggested we may come back for an amendment to do some work between basically where I'm circling with the mouse and easterly to the east side of Racing Beach Avenue. But there were some complications because of the road, and we looked into some options, and we actually met on site with a pipe supplying company, and we all did some research. Sorry, Kevin, if I'm being wordy. But the bottom line is, we found a method where we can actually insert a slightly smaller 10-inch diameter plastic pipe into an existing 12-inch clay pipe. We ran a camera down the pipe, we investigated, and the pipe is pretty clean and hasn't collapsed. We could see the joints, and we could see that the smaller pipe diameter could be installed through the existing pipe, basically like lining that pipe with a plastic pipe, and that means no excavation whatsoever. So the excavation we were already proposing to do, of course, would be done, but when we excavate on the west side of the road, it's gonna give us an opportunity to feed this plastic pipe. It's a flexible pipe. It's similar to like a gas main pipe, the yellow gas main pipe. It's very smooth plastic, and it's flexible, and the equipment that George has can actually push it through the pipe to the other side without doing any further excavation. We also noticed on that side, on the east side, that there's some slumping and erosion around the existing pipe, and we were asking if we could install a small stone head wall around that inlet side of the pipe while we're doing the rest of this work, just to stabilize the shoulder of the road and prevent any more erosion into the ditch. And that's the amendment request. Happy to answer any questions, and George is here to answer questions too. There's actually a profile on the plan too, if you want to see it in profile. The road, pavement, and the place where we're gonna cut the pipe, and we're gonna push from this location through and underneath the road and install the small head wall.
Mr. Chairman?
kind of simple.
Mr. Chairman, staff doesn't have any comments or concerns with this.
Okay, Steve?
I was expecting this, Mr. Chairman. I was waiting for it. It makes all the sense in the world.
Russ?
No, I'm good with it, no problem.
All good with it?
Good, I'm glad it worked out this way.
Yeah.
Kevin? Oh, he looks anguished.
The only, the only problem I could foresee is if you had a collapse under the road at some point. I mean, it's not like it's a heavily traveled road or anything, but, you know, the plastic, the kind of plastic you're talking about as opposed to a plastic that had a little heft to it. But it's certainly
Aren't you
worth a
pushing it
try.
through what's already there?
Well, it's fairly rigid pipe like gas main pipe, and it's going to be pushed through
I understand.
an
yeah.
existing,
I get it, I get it.
So it's
I'm
probably
just
Schedule
worried-
40, right? Something in that area?
Can I ask
Schedule
you,
40?
can I ask a question? Is this kind of, George, do you remember what they did on the sewer main, where they pushed that plastic coating through? It's the same thing, yeah.
Pretty heavy
Good.
duty.
Yeah,
So it's, in itself, it's.
George,
it's
please.
schedule
yep, sorry.
Sorry.
Within itself, George Vitello.
Sorry, I just wanted to
Good
make
evening,
sure
George
I was,
Vitello from
yeah.
George Vitello Excavation. It's a
Yeah.
pretty heavy-duty pipe, like a Schedule 40. It's just a little more flexible.
Yeah,
Okay,
Um,
okay.
In addition, that you're also gonna be in a clay pipe. So this is exactly why he wants to, the owner of the association, wants to install the pipe for preventative maintenance, so it doesn't happen eventually.
Okay. I know the kind of pipe you're talking
Yeah.
about that you put in
Yeah.
sewers.
no, so it's
We
not.
gave that
Heavier
idea up
than
as a
that.
bad idea, because the stuff floated.
Heavier than that,
Oh,
Kevin. Heavier than
Slightly
sewer.
bigger pipe, sorry. Having flashes again.
All right. Courtney,
No questions.
all right.
Make a motion to close the hearing, take it under advisement.
Second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion from the board? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous.
Thank you.
Gentlemen,
May I go? I'm not on any of these boards.
No, you have to
No, you
stay here
can't.
I
to
wanna
the
get
bitter
something,
end.
I have something for George.
What?
May I go? I'm not on any of these
you're
votes.
dismissed.
I'll come
Wait a
back.
minute,
not
I
on
don't
it. I'm
know.
not
Back,
on
I
it.
just have something for George. I'll leave my coat. I'll leave my telephone. I would not leave my telephone.
If you
We're
talk about
Russ
it
might
while
get
you're
it.
at it.
Go ahead.
Geez, you were already gone, you're still talking.
Where is,
I shouldn't be on it.
What's the
Am I
matter?
on any of these?
yes,
you're
well,
on.
hang on, before everybody runs out the door, may I please check the quorums? Find Courtney, leave. Where is all my stuff? Did it fall?
Betsy, I have you on. Oh, you weren't on the second one.
Amy closed the week I was gone.
Yep. What do we have? for 'em? We have
I had
Steve,
them all in my
Russ,
box. What happened
myself,
to
and
everything?
Kevin. And we have,
I don't know where anything is. I
Amy
lost
Ross.
everything.
Kevin, Peter.
All right, which one are we on?
The first one is.
Mary Manuel
Mary
Way.
Manuel. Jamie, Ross, Kevin, Peter.
I'm not on that?
Jamie,
Steve.
No.
Russ,
But Betsy was on the first one.
Kevin, Steve. No, we have Steve. Steve's
have
on that
Steve?
one. Oh, wait, no. Jamie. Wait a minute, Peter, Kevin,
might have
Russ,
watched it on
Jamie,
television.
Courtney. Sit. Oh, wait, no, Courtney's not on the second one. Who did this? Wait a minute.
That's one meeting.
Um,
You guys didn't do anything that meeting. Continued everything.
so we'll have to wait until Peter gets in, so we'll have to schedule a special meeting. Do we know when Peter is going to be back in town?
So the two that were on the first hearing can't participate in the
Well,
vote?
hey,
Even if we watched it on television?
well, I think that, I thought town council told me that the Board of Selectmen had adopted the Mullen Rule, but why don't we,
Play it safe.
if you wanna play it safe, fine, if you wanna vote it, that's.
I'm asking you.
Well, this board has always been very particular about their quorum, so that's how
Okay.
I operate, but
So we'll wait
It's-
till Peter gets back.
yes,
Okay.
So
you can go, Cory.
I'm excused.
Yes.
Okay, so this is
We'll
gonna
set
be-
a special meeting for either Monday or Tuesday, so, you
Congratulations.
could let
Court.
me know your preferred, are you gonna be here, Russell, next
Court.
week, or,
Yeah,
okay.
yep, I have something on Monday.
We'll find out from Peter tomorrow or Friday, and then we'll coordinate, some meeting on Tuesday.
Okay.
Can you write that down and remember to do that for me?
Okay, so for the record, that was Charlene Cardoza, trustee, estate of Charles A. Cardoza, 2012 revocable trust, 41 Mary Emanuel Way, Falmouth, Mass. So we're gonna hold that. Next up is
Just a second, I'm sorry, Mr.
No,
Chairman.
fine.
Monday's out for me, so
Okay.
don't even plan on Monday,
No, I won't.
for me anyway.
Well, I need
Well, we need you.
you.
So maybe Tuesday.
You need it.
Um,
That's old school, huh?
hey, this is the best way to do it, too, I'm telling you. I think a blood work, I see Wednesday's not a good one
Have to
either.
agree with Russell on that one.
So Tuesday or Thursday or Friday?
No, it has to be Tuesday.
Okay, I'm
It
here,
has to be
I
Tuesday.
can do that.
Well, I mean, I don't wanna
First thing
speak
in
for
the
Peter,
morning.
but he's pretty,
No,
been pretty
we'll get a
amenable
hold
to-
of him, and if not,
Kevin,
hang
you
on.
okay with Tuesday? Not
Kevin,
official yet, but just roughly.
Sure.
hang on, Kevin,
Okay, sorry about that.
No, no,
Russell,
do it now and
not your fault.
Yeah, I know.
we're not fighting it later. I'm buying you a plastic bag. Okay, moving
I almost
forward.
brought
Hang
one.
on, I
Susan
don't
Choate
understand
Garland,
who did
42
this.
Chase Road, Falmouth, Mass.
Hang on. Steve, Russell, Jamie, Kevin.
This is Phragmites Management.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
it
this
was the
was-
kid from, McGrath presented the plan, but Edible Landscapes will be doing the, Phragmites removal work.
I think the only issue, the only notes I had was that they use a licensed applicator,
Yeah.
which he said
Yeah,
wasn't
well,
an
he
issue.
said he was gonna try to get his applicator's license by the time the project
Yeah,
was,
and if not,
was
it'll be
proposed,
somebody,
it
yeah.
would be
But
somebody.
didn't he say he had a sub that he already used already,
Yeah.
so, if
Which
he
is-
doesn't have the ticket, he uses a sub,
So either way,
so,
he's covered.
yeah.
But it's good, we made it clear that he has to
Yeah.
have somebody licensed. And then they're gonna meet with you guys on site?
Yep,
Okay. That's all I had.
just because it's a newer, contractor with this kind of work, so we'll meet them on site.
I move to approve as discussed.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next up, John and Deborah Gillespie, 39 Inkberry Lane, North Falmouth, Mass. This is raising a building, putting up a new. We needed a DEP number, we have that now, correct?
Yes,
Was that all we were waiting for?
that was all we were waiting for.
Okay, I, move to
Kevin.
approve as discussed,
Russell,
with the new DEP number.
yep, and we have everybody.
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
It's just the raise and rebuild,
Yep.
raise and build.
There was a slight portion of the property was touching the. easement.
Yeah, it was
Special,
on
you think?
that bank, but the bank was
the other side of the road.
inland,
Yep.
and
Yep,
they overcame the presumptions the bank was significant to stormwater prevention and flood control.
yep.
Motion and second?
Thought you were running off.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Kevin?
Aye,
Aye.
sorry.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Next up, Robert Sullivan, Wings Pond LLC, 63 North Falmouth Highway, Falmouth, Mass.
That was the ANRAD?
Same
Right.
one?
Yes, we only heard that once, we kept continuing them.
You said Mark reviewed this?
Mark reviewed this, Kevin went out there, Alyssa went out there, the flags are fine.
Two
Mark's
thumbs
gonna
up.
write up the findings. The biggest thing is they're, not arguing that it is still considered a certified vernal pool. So that's the key to this, and
So
if
this
they
isn't-
were, challenging that, just for the board's knowledge, that we would have had to wait to confirm that, or, you know, until the spring months, when vernal pool species are
Next
active.
couple of weeks.
But, they're not challenging that it is a certified vernal pool, they just wanted to lock down the actual wetland line.
So this is more of an acceptance of conditions versus order conditions?
Yes, it's an acceptance of the wetland line.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
correct.
perfect.
Those are good for 3 years?
Yes.
So motion to accept the wetlands line, is that what I
Correct.
heard? Okay,
Yes.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Oh, no.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Lastly, the Woods Hole, Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket Steamship Authority, Woods Hole Ferry Terminal, end of Railroad Avenue, Woods Hole, Falmouth, Mass.
So this was dredging? Because there was scour there, right?
There
That was the issue,
scour
so they're
and the-
gonna
and
dredge
the-
that.
And the wall is, the sheet piling is moving, so they
Yep.
have to fill the scour hole and then lay the concrete blanket down and then put almost like a little revetment against the thing,
Stabilize that.
to stabilize the wall.
Yeah.
And they were gonna do that for the length of the rest of the wall, because of the wall's moving.
Moved.
And then they were proposing, to put the pilings inside the wall, as a added measure.
Yep.
They may employ both, they may not, but I asked them to permit both methods in case they were both required.
So this would be inclusive of the previous order conditions?
Yes, it's an amendment.
And we don't, you think we need to add anything for this?
No. I mean, it is, we have to repair that wall. They can't have the wall moving, you know.
Okay.
You asked me at the hearing, you know, do we have concerns with it? Do we wish it never happened? Yes, but there's really not a lot you can do at this point. Half the bulkhead, half the marine is already constructed. So,
Okay, so we're really looking for acceptance of the amendment?
yep,
Okay.
correct.
Make a motion to accept the amendment on the Woods Hole Terminal.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous.
Motion to adjourn?
Brought it all over, up.
Second.
We have a motion to adjourn and
I
a
know,
second.
I
All
have
those in
to
favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.
Thank you.